I think we're ready to start now with our next panel. My name's Charlotte Ruhe. I'm the Managing Director for Central and Southeast Europe at EBRD. So you just heard my boss, Jürgen Rigterink, and I'm very pleased to introduce our panel to discuss foreign direct investment in Greece. So on my far left is Alex Fotakidis, partner of CVC Capital Partners in the UK. On my immediate left, Grigoris Stergioulis, Chairman and CEO of Enterprise Greece. On my immediate right, Mehmet Kutman, Chairman of Global Investment Holdings in Turkey, who is a wide investor across Europe. And then on the far right, George Longos, Managing Partner of Alantra Greece. So I'm going to start with Mehmet, and I'm going to ask him about their investments in Greece and what prompted him to choose to invest in the Greek market after having already invested in a number of markets across Europe, and maybe tell us a bit about your experience.
Well, the reason she starts with me, I'm always very controversial, just to give life, as it's the last panel probably. Thank you, Charlotte. I'd like to thank Delphi Forum as well as EBRD for inviting me. To answer your question, we have zilch investment in Greece. We have no investment. I've been trying to invest in Greece for the last probably 12 to 14 years. We teamed up with Munich Airport for the island airport privatization. For national security reasons, we were disqualified. Although what we have as a national security threat, except being Turkish maybe, but I'm born in Paris and I carry dual citizenship, American and Turkish. We run cruise ports, we run power stations, we have real estate, shopping malls, and some real estate developments. So that's my experience. The other thing we do right now, we short banks, Greek banks, quite heftily out of our London office, and that's a reality I cannot hide, basically. But talking a little bit seriously, I think Greece is on the right track, frankly. The issues might have been in the past. Moving forward, we are very keen, especially on the cruise ports, as we are the largest cruise port operator in the world. We run all the way from Havana to Singapore, approximately 20 cruise ports, and we have about 35% market share in the Mediterranean alone, and probably 20+%. And recently we've been awarded Nassau, Bahama, which is the largest cruise port in the world. So we are very keen to invest in Greece if the opportunity is given.
Thank you. Now, Alex, I know you have an investment in Greece, so maybe you can tell us about your experience here.
Thanks, Charlotte. We at CVC, we've been active in Greece since 2016, primarily in the healthcare space. We saw an opportunity to consolidate the private hospital market in Athens. And we started with a small investment in Metropolitan Hospital in southern Athens, and then made an add-on in northern Athens with Yasso General, which is now called Metropolitan General. And then most recently, towards the end of 2018, we acquired the largest hospital group, private hospital group in Greece, EIA. And now we have a network of 5 hospitals in total, roughly 350 million of revenue. It's a transaction in total around 600 million enterprise value, and we've invested more than 300 million. It's early days, but we're really pleased with the investment. The consolidation has happened faster and larger than we expected. And 2019 is really a year of integration. And then from 2020 onwards, we'll look at new projects in the space.
Just to follow on, do you see other sectors where there's a good opportunity for consolidation for a foreign investor like this?
Yes, I think there are 3 or 4 sectors in Greece where there is a huge consolidation opportunity. Within healthcare, I think pharma has consolidation opportunity, and the renewables space we were discussing earlier with George is another area. I think tourism, which is obviously one of the largest sectors and one of the most important sectors, there's a huge opportunity for consolidation. And I think consolidation is both inward and outward in the sense that when we look at Greece, because it's a small economy, we look at Greece as both an opportunity to make platform investments, such as in the hospital space, but also to make add-on investments for our portfolio companies around the world, and also to look at combinations of investing between Greek companies and companies in adjacent geographies.
I'm going to turn to George now to ask him what he sees as sort of key barriers for foreign direct investment in Greece and what you would advise the government to do to attract more investment.
Look, I mean, they are saying that investment bankers are good storytellers, so I need to honor my breed. A couple of months ago, we were advising a foreign strategic buyer on acquisition of a pretty visible asset. So one night we were sitting in the meeting room, something like 8, 9 o'clock at night, and we had the managing director asking us a simple question. Now, if we end up in court, how long is it going to take for us to resolve the case? Then the legal advisor stepped in. They said, okay, maybe 5, 6 years, could be 7. And I mean, the guy literally was devastated. He was shocked. Now, we ended up building up constructive mechanisms on allocating risk, on escrow arrangements, reps, warranties, try to quantify everything. We ended up having a transaction document of something like 130, 140 pages long. Now, okay, how to negotiate, mission impossible to close a transaction like that. Now, what I want to point out is that legislation, I mean, legislative framework, delays in judicial processes, it's a key shortcoming that foreign buyers are seeing. I mean, if you see the Greek market, the ingredients are there. Human capital is there, infrastructure is high quality, I mean, climate, the weather, everything is excellent. I mean, valuations have been hit as a result of the crisis, so why don't we see FDIs flooding the country?
Grigoris, what would you say to the foreign investor who just heard these comments from George to convince him that, in fact, they should come anyways?
First of all, I would like to thank you for the honor to be on this panel. And I would like to start my small answer to your question by presenting 2 issues. The first issue is everybody likes investment. Everybody wants investment. Everybody wants money, foreign money, to be attracted to the country, to his country, and create jobs and create new opportunities for the economy. There are 2 issues, though, that I would like to share with you. The first is, does the Greek society believe in investments? Are we ready to attract investments? Because investments means profitability, investment means cultural issues to be changed, investment means a process of starting with something and be on the way of investment. The second issue I would like to mention is, do people from abroad trust us? I will tell you a small story. A few years ago, I was the CEO of Hellenic Petroleum, as you know, and I was traveling in Spain. I took a taxi from the airport to an office, and I was talking on my mobile like everybody else. And the driver realized I was coming from Greece, and he stopped and said, I would like you to pay me in advance. So the brand name of the country is this. This is the brand name of Greece. So attracting investments in the country, there are 2 issues I would like to repeat. First of all, we have to believe on investments, and second, other people to believe in us. The second issue is, are we doing well? Yes, gentlemen. This year we have a historic record on investments, more than 3 billion. And our exports have been more than 30 billion, which is another record. Are we happy? No, we are not. We are not, because the potential of the country, to our opinion, is different. And what is the potential? First of all, I think we have a very high infrastructure, a road system, airports, ports, the most educated generation of our history, and a bio-climate that allows many things to happen. You know, Greece is lucky. It is the last stop of the birds leaving Europe and going to Africa. So we have a variety of plants that we're lucky to have, although we did nothing about that. The second issue is which areas I would propose to be invested in. You know that this year has been a historic record also in tourism. More than 30 million tourists arrived in Greece, and around 16 billion is the added value to the GDP of the country. On top of that, we see that there's a big shift in tourism arrivals. People who want to spend money on 5- and 6-star hotels. It's growing. Only last week we announced 4 projects, more than 500 million to be in Crete, in Mykonos, in Peloponnese, 5- and 6-star hotels that, believe it or not, the cost of renting for 99 years, 10,000 per square meter. So it's a growing market. According to MRH, Greece is going to have the highest percentage of the 26 billion to be invested in Mediterranean countries the next few years. The second is technology. You know, people believe that agriculture is the highest of the highest heavy industries in Greece. It's not. The product, the cost of the value, sorry, of the agricultural products in Greece are around 10 billion, out of which 6 billion is exported. So there are no more products to be exported. Unless we reorganize our production basis, there are products in Greece, the Kalamata olives, etc., that are sold. The full production of 2019 is sold already. So we have to think twice on where we invest money. From this point of view, the second, to my opinion, important proposal for investment is JVs in agricultural production. The third issue, as I said, is technology. Technology nowadays, gentlemen, is a very complicated issue. It gathers, it spreads all over, from tourism on a high, you know, the biggest tourist company in the world has not even a room booking. The biggest trade company has not even a shop. So from this point of view, technology allows access to a huge number of people that in order not only to increase production, not only to increase productivity, because at the end, you can only sell your products if they're equally good and equally cheap to the competition. And you do realize that Greece is trying to take a small pie on their traditional products from really strong countries like Italy, like Turkey, like Spain, like France. So you have to be equally good. You have to use all the tools of technology in order to be able and compete against these people. I'm glad to say that the last few years, especially after the successful International Affair of Thessaloniki, Facebook, Microsoft, SAP, Hawaii they installed research centers in Athens in order to use these new brains of young people. Are we happy? No, we are not. I repeat, we are not. And from this point of view, we are here to offer to you any kind of help free of charge at Enterprise Greece, to direct you to opportunities through the privatization, through opportunities we can really explain to you and see. We have prepared a list of around 100 projects ongoing in Greece that I think should be subsidized by foreign investments. And one last thing. Allow me to say that FDIs are not purely economic. This is only a small part, an important but small part of attracting investments. The most important thing, ladies and gentlemen, is the change of culture it imposes to the country, to the society. Because you have to go to the international market, you have to compete against very, very strong brands, and from this point of view, it gives you the opportunity to renovate your company, renovate your economy, renovate your brains. In a globalized world, it's far more than important than the flow of money and cash flow.
Well, thank you. I think I agree with you completely. And in fact, I could have probably started off the panel by saying why FDI and why it matters. And of course, the Greek economy needs investment, but it especially needs those features that foreign investors bring. So, Alex, I'd like to come back to you because we spoke a little bit earlier about privatization, PPPs, opportunities of this nature. How do you see these in Greece, and where would you choose, if you could, to invest in these?
Honestly, I think it's complicated. I think privatization processes are too complicated for foreign institutional investors, and I'm really pleased to hear from Grigoris that there are local partners who can help. And it's difficult for CVC to make a decision to invest 6 months in a process and come second, or invest 6 months in a process and come first, but then be asked to rebid and then get priced out of the investment, because we ourselves have investors that we have to report to and we have target returns. And so I think it is the way I would summarize my perception of privatization processes in Greece. It is a bit of a black box. And so the way we look at them is we will probably not participate unless we have a real angle, a real operational angle that where we know we have good chances of succeeding. And maybe that's a good segue to the PPP element, because I do think now, having consolidated the private hospital market in Greece, there is a huge opportunity to support the public administration in improving public healthcare. And we've seen it in other countries, and it's important to have also local partners such as the EBRD, who's already a lender in our hospital group. It's important to have local individuals who understand the local sensitivities. And I think in that kind of shape, and PPPs where we can bring to the table not only FDI, but the local operational experience and the international operational experience, that can be a winning combination, both for the investor and the public administration.
Mehmet, you've invested in a lot of other European markets. What lessons would you bring for the Greeks to bring more foreign investors here?
Yeah, we are invested practically in all the Mediterranean markets, from North Africa to Spain to Italy. I think Greek is lucky in one way. By the way, I don't agree with Grigoris that it's not trusted. I think if you compare, and I'm not going to mention countries, if you compare to some other Mediterranean countries or your neighbor Turkey, you're much more trusted. So that's coming from outside. That I can tell you to start with. But anyhow, I think Greece is lucky in one way, because I'll go with the Turkish example, and I'm going to a little bit be harsh on my home country. I think what happened in Turkey when money was very readily available around the world, post-Lehman, post-whatever you call it, Turkish banks has been very, very aggressive lending to privatization or PPP projects. And most of you know there's serious trouble in the Turkish banking system, probably bigger than, size-wise, definitely bigger than the Greek system. Yeah, size-wise, bigger than the Greek banking, but there's a serious trouble. Whereas in Greece right now, banks are in trouble. So real money will come from outside the country. You cannot buy something, go to a Greek bank, borrow the money, like most private equity funds have been doing in Turkey. They haven't brought, probably, in our calculation, a couple $100 million in a process of $50 billion privatization, more or less. So Greece is lucky in there. Money, I mean, people who buy asset here, they have to bring their money with them, or EBRD with them, or a combination of both. This is a very positive point. I think the most important thing for the FDI is really the cultural thing. Greeks, rightfully, they see these assets as their assets, and this is right. There's nothing wrong with that, i.e., 10 million, whatever million population, if you talk about a cruise port or whatever, especially national assets, they see as their assets. So privatization is a difficult process around the world. In Turkey, it started in the 90s. I used to be an investment banker, advised a lot of firms. It only kicked in when there was a very solid government with very solid mandate and post a major crisis of 2001. So for the model, is it the right model or not is a question. I take an asset, whether it's a power station or gas pipeline or anything, and sell it outright. Is that the right asset? And in our industry, one of our branches, as I said, ports, cruise ports. and especially in some other countries in the Caribbean, for example, where it's very crucial and it's the center of the tourism and it's a national asset. So what we developed, for example, in Bahama, we said, okay, that's perfectly fine. We'll take 49%. The remaining 49% of the shares, we will basically have a fund, infrastructure fund, which we will offer to the Bahamians. And then we're going to lend those Bahamians X many $million for them to become shareholders. So that's one country, for example, where we won the race against probably $150 billion market cap because all cruise lines teamed up against us. But we won the race. Why? Because we had the public support. So the privatization, especially, or FDI, has to come from grassroots. It has to come from the people. I do not believe the people of Greece or the Greeks, this you might believe, but if you go to the guy on the street, I don't think they believe in that. I don't think they want it. I think they are suffering, the economic suffering basically, but still they will not let go those national assets. So a new mechanism, a new structure, hopefully with EBRD, doing that or sponsoring that. Maybe you should come with a fund and lend to the Greek people so that they can own shares together with the strategic guy. But if it's not going to be easy, that I can tell you.
And maybe it's a good question for Charlotte, actually. Would you consider setting up a Greek-focused private equity fund? Target 1 billion? We'd have an anchor investment from the EBRD.
Very good question. We will invest.
Yeah. Would Enterprise
I
Greece
think
also
CVC
support?
also will invest in that.
For sure.
Well, we always want our private equity fund partners to have their own skin in the game. So this is you know, sine qua non.
I think the question, Charlotte, the question is, would you lend to the Greek people through a fund money to buy those shares, and then they'll owe you, and we, or CVC, or somebody else, like Bahama model, will own 49, Greek people will own 49, and 2% will be EBRD to balance. In general, I mean, if you sell private assets, it's different.
Okay, I think. Okay, let's take a step back because we are discussing about privatizations. Now, on privatization processes, sorry, Alex, I mean, I don't share the views. Obviously, it's privatization, it's a public asset. It has to be. I mean, it can't be bilateral negotiations. So, I mean, for you investing time and money, I understand the shortcomings, but I mean, it's not the process itself. On the point that Mehmet raised, that people, especially Greeks, are not happy with privatizations, not only Greeks, across the globe, I'm not really sure that I share the views. To the extent that processes and values are right, we can see that private investors sometimes are better managers, so it makes more sense. I sense, and this is an assumption, it could be arbitrary, that it's gaining momentum within at least the Greeks. The notion that private investors can manage better and see better performance. Then again, just if you allow me one point, if we see the NPL ratio in Greek SMEs and try to extrapolate that 50–60%. Okay, I'm not an expert, but that's more or less the number. We are seeing that okay, 6 out of 10 Greek companies need to change their capital structure. They're highly geared. So FDIs, okay, large infrastructure, large privatization is one side of the coin. Where we need FDIs is in Greek corporates. Now, the problem on that one is that Greek corporates are really small. The Aegeans, the Tsipitas, and the Titanas of the Greek world, that's just very few. I mean, how many potential targets do you have, Alex, in Greece? 5?
4 or 5.
4 or 5, okay, for a 500 million ticket. Now, I can hardly imagine an American investor packing his bag to travel to Greece to buy an asset of 100 million revenues. So the problem in Greece, it's highly fragmented sectors of economic activity. With the exception of telcos and banks, there's nothing else. So what we need is sophisticated investors like CVC with a solid buy and build approach, buy a platform, and then continue consolidating positions so that we have visible targets and have a second wave.
But I think to attract more investors, what about taxation? I think the level may be a bit high.
When I was here last year, one of my closing remarks was on taxation, and it's one of the issues that we are seeing at all levels in Greece. And actually, earlier today, I was talking to an entrepreneur here who was complaining that he pays 70% of his income in tax, and that's just too high. It is demotivating. We see that at levels in senior management where actually offering incentives, and whether it's a bonus or offering a salary increase, the net benefit to the manager is de minimis, and actually they would rather that we invest that in the company and we find other schemes, longer term schemes of rewarding them. It's something that has to change. I know it is top of the agenda. We haven't seen it yet, but going back and linking to the importance of also the human capital that we have, and also the comments that Jorgen made earlier about attracting human capital, I think we can make the investments, but also there has to be a tax environment that is attractive for successful professionals to come and work in Greece.
I think it's not just about the tax environment for the professionals, but for the firms. And one of the big problems is the gray economy.
Yeah.
Because the bigger the gray economy, the more unfair the regime is for those who pay taxes.
Yes.
They're bearing the burden for that 40% that aren't, or whatever it may be. And so I think that is a real problem. Did you want to?
I think you're absolutely right, and this is the key reason why the whole reform, the taxation reform, is moving higher and higher on the government's agenda. I mean, I think, I'm not an expert again, but I think that there is a high correlation between increased tax rates on individuals, on corporates, and size of the black market. You know, if we are to try to resolve this problem, I mean, the taxation reform is critical, but I mean, eventually it will happen. We are talking a lot about that. Hopefully the official lenders and...
It can't get worse, hopefully.
I hope not.
Grigoris, maybe you'd like to say
Yes, that's a good point. Actually, I will tell you two examples. You know, I don't think any government in the world would like to have more taxation. None of them. The question is how you can decrease taxation, what will be the influence, the complication coming from taxation. From this point of view, Greece is, I would like to say, at the corner. Because having the surpluses they have to do and having the economic environment after all these years of austerity, it's not easy to say easy things about decreasing taxation. You know, allow me to, in brackets, say what is populism? It's easy answers. This is the issue. So if we think that by decreasing 2 or 3% taxation we'll solve all the problems for the economy, I don't believe so. I will tell you an example. The biggest investment in the last years in Greece was by Costco in the port of Piraeus. It's around $1 billion with the expansion now altogether. You know how much the Chinese have invested in England? 37 billion. How much they have invested in France? 36 billion. So did they invest because of the low taxation? No. They invested because the status of the country guarantees a long life performance of their investments. So this is the real issue we have to solve in this beautiful algorithm called FDIs. We have to convince, of course, all the investors that we have a very serious legal system. We believe in investments. We are going to have a steady approach on foreign investments. We'll never be able to do what the Trump administration does by lowering so much the taxation, or France is doing, because we are a weak economy. But from this point of view, we have to impose our advantages. We have to stability, seriousness, and whatever we promise, to keep it. This is the only advantage we have to impose to investors. And something else is learning from mistakes. You know, sometimes we have to discuss how we came to this crisis situation. One of the reasons, not the only one, one of the reasons is the model of development. What was this model? Borrow money for the banks, create with a very few owns money a company, bring the profit abroad, and the time the company goes bad, sell it to the state. Am I mistaken?
You forgot the subsidies.
Even worse, even worse. So we have to forget about this. We need investors who are going to stay for a long time. And talking about privatization, gentlemen, privatization is a tool. It's a tool for development. If you believe that you are not strong enough to make a highly competitive company and run it in a competitive way in the world, in a globalized world, you have to privatize it. Otherwise, if you have a piece of land owned by the state, but there's no development, you have to privatize it. But you have a high technology company that really working in the national ways, you don't have to privatize it because you lose a tool. So that's very important. Privatization, FDI, should be under an umbrella of strategic development. And the tools like taxation, privatization, social security, this be under the same umbrella. And this discussion, I think, we're mature enough to say now we see light, I think, we see some light coming up, but we must be very careful not to repeat the same mistakes. Allow me to say again, under a populist approach, because easy answers are dangerous.
I like that answer, or that response very much. Now, I think we have some time to have questions from the floor, if anybody has any questions for any of the panel members. Does anybody want? No? Okay. Well, in that case, we can continue. We've spoke about tourism, healthcare, and I thought it was interesting you mentioned the joint ventures for agribusiness and some of the products and sort of trying to develop this sector more. But that is a very fragmented sector. So how can we sort of make it more attractive for investors like Alex to look at this?
Can I challenge the audience in the panel? Okay. I think in middle April, we're going to have on top-level discussion with our Turkish friends in Thessaloniki, or in Athens, maybe. How this idea was created. You know, we try to access markets like China, USA, India, etc. Access what? How? So the idea of JVs, together with products from Turkey, from the Balkans, from the area, from Mediterranean, is mature. All the ships coming from China to Europe, to the port of Piraeus, which, by the way, will be the biggest port in the Mediterranean this year, are leaving empty. The ships are going back empty. So the transportation cost is quite low. So why don't we cooperate with each other? Fill these ships with products, any kind of products, and distribute them around the world, far away from Europe, to India, to Eastern countries, and even to China. So this is the idea of, you know, making Mediterranean a sea of peace, a sea of cooperation, and an area of prosperity. It is in our hands, gentlemen. I don't expect anybody else to resolve these issues. It is in our hands. And from this point of view, investors, banks, and us have to sit together. This is an invitation I'm making from this panel, to sit together and see the world market. It's a huge world. The world is 7.5 billion occupants these days. In 10 years' time, it will be 9.5. 9.5 billion people around the world. And we're talking about the Chinese from Piraeus have access to 300 million consumers. And we're talking about some hundreds of thousands of Greek wine, some millions maybe from Turkish wine, some millions from Spanish wine, and we're talking about billions of consumers. It's about time we have to sit seriously down and plan our future for our companies, for our investors, and for our people.
I think that we should also think a little bit about technology. That was a sector you touched on, and we've had some meetings in London with Greeks who are in the technology business growing their startups in London. How do we attract these people back once their companies get to be you know, more substantial, where they can really employ a large number of people here. Does anybody have a thought on this?
Well, I don't want to speak again, although I'm the one who is handling this issue. Okay, sorry, I'm taking the panel. I shouldn't do that. First of all, I don't think that we should attract these people back. Basically because these high technology startups, there's no base, there's no place, so you can work everywhere. That's a new thing. You know, after the Silicon Valley decrease worldwide, all the research centers on ITC are moving around the world. I think the Spanish made an excellent job in Barcelona. They attract most of the research centers, but Greece is growing also. And from this point of view, I have to announce that I think in June we'll have a Balkan ITC conference in Greece, trying to bring all these people, you know, from the Balkans and from Turkey, from everywhere, to create a hub, a technology hub in the area. So we do need these people to work in abroad to give us what is at the moment needed, what is the world thirsty of. You know, the world is full of data and thirsty for information. So we need this kind of approaches of young people, literate people on the edge of technology in order to give us customers, give us solutions. This is the issue. Developing technology is one thing. Selling the technology is the most important. And having these people around the world is a door to the consumers.
If I'm allowed to add what Grigoris said, I think we are discussing two critical issues here. Grigoris said quite a few times the word trust. I mean, that's the first and foremost. That's the ingredient of the paramount importance if we are to consider FDIs. Unless people trust, they have equal opportunities for the technology people to come back to bring their businesses here. So this is the very first point that we need to consider, and to some extent it relates to the legislative amendment or reform of the judicial tax, whatever, that needs to move higher to the agenda of the government. Sorry, we are not that close. I mean, during the last 10 years of the crisis, we've seen quite a few things happening. I mean, we are quite proud about Greece recouping its competitiveness, but we need to consider that this has been done on the back of labor reduction cost. We didn't gain competitiveness by other means, and we should have sought that. And I think to a large extent that was the key reason, this plus taxation, that led those people leaving the country. And for sure, this is something that we need back. It's a different culture, different mentality. We need that.
And I think, I mean, in technology, maybe focusing on the services side, where, in terms of actually, if you look at the UK as a huge services economy, and you look at the characteristics that we could take from there, actually you have a highly educated population, a high proportion of the population is English speaking. I think that you can have a technology services or an IT services hub in Greece. And we did actually, apart from healthcare, one of the sectors we've invested in is an online travel agency. We bought Pamediakopes as an add-on for one of our portfolio companies in Sweden. And when we did that, actually one of the reasons we were attracted is to a lot of the operations and the backbone will stay in Greece because it's cost competitive. Because the cost of an IT engineer in Greece is a third of the cost of one in Stockholm.
Not generally in technology, but if you look to the overall thing, the most important thing and why Turkey keeps coming out of the crisis relatively fast, it's stability. You need to ongoing stability vis-a-vis rules, regulations, and laws. Tax is really not the top priority. It's not even in the top 12, let's say. So as long as there's stability, as long as we know as an investor that the rules are not going to change 10, 15, 5, 20 years down the road, I think Greece has a lot to offer, from agriculture to tourism. I don't know whether it will be technology. That's, you know, service maybe on the technology side. But the most important thing, it's in the and I think Grigoris said that, it's in the closest point to Africa and a transit point. And successfully you got the Chinese for Piraeus, which is very important, under one road, one belt. So that will change the whole map for the region. You know, I'm very hopeful for Greece, as long as they take this step forward.
Thank you. We're also very hopeful for Greece, and I'd just like to put a plug to the investors in the room. Please think about EBRD. If you're investing in Greece, we would be very happy to talk to you about being a partner. And
CVC,
Sabina
EBRD.
Jorman, our director for Greece, right here in the front row. Let me thank our panel, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Charlotte.